This is Audible.
Dreamspinner Press presents Touch Me Gently by J.R. Lovelace. Read for you by Jeff Gelder.
Touch Me Gently, Chapter 1. Hands grabbed at him, holding him down roughly. His clothes were stripped from his body, torn as threads gave way to the harsh tugging. His pleading for it to stop flooded the room, and then screams of agony as he felt his body being violated. The musky scent of sweat and alcohol reached his nostrils, and he gagged as he lay there beneath the unforgiving, thrusting body above his. His mind seemed to shut down, and he felt nothing, heard nothing, was nothing. Fingers bit into his flesh, digging deep and bruising it. Suddenly, hot warmth flooded his insides, and the body above his collapsed. Before he could try to move, a searing pain split one side of his face, and he screamed again as blood spilled down his face, filling his nose and mouth, choking his cries off. He coughed over and over, trying to keep the coppery liquid from filling his lungs. Now no one will want you. You'll always be mine. Caden James shot upright in bed, gasping for breath, his body sweating profusely and soaking the sheets around him. Terror pounded through him as he remembered what he had tried so hard to forget. His violet eyes wandered around the shabby one-room apartment he rented, searching for any demons hidden in the shadows. He slumped back down onto the bed, struggling to control his breathing and to stem the flood of terror. That day's events had opened the door to his memories again. 19 now, he lived alone, and today he'd been fired from another job. Fear of large men always ended up getting him fired because he couldn't control his panic attacks. Sighing, Caden ran a thin, shaking hand over his face. Knowing he wouldn't be able to go back to sleep, he rolled out of bed to make himself a cup of coffee. He flicked on a light and wandered over to the sink to fill the coffee pot with water. He set it to brew and sat down to wait, lighting up a cigarette. The apartment he lived in was all that he could afford, dingy and small, with only one room that consisted of the kitchen, the bedroom, and a small adjoining bathroom that you could barely turn around in. His hand lifted to trace the ugly scar that ran from the corner of his left eye in a curve down to the corner of his mouth. No one wanted to hire him for anything other than grunt work because of his face. Most people found it difficult not to stare and wonder, or be disgusted and turn away. Tomorrow, he would have to go back to the labor agency and see if they had anything else for him. The manager had to be getting tired of him, but he couldn't change the deep-seated fear that crippled him and sent him to his knees. The coffee finished brewing as he stubbed out his cigarette, and he grabbed the only mug he owned, rinsed it out, and filled it with piping hot coffee. Sniffing appreciatively, he took a hesitant sip, wincing when it burned the tip of his tongue. He'd always been slender and almost feminine in some ways. His shoulder-length black hair, shaggy around his face, gave him an even more feminine appearance. It attracted men in a way that he didn't want. He might look tiny, only 5'6", but he was strong physically due to the many jobs he'd taken requiring heavy lifting. Despite the muscle he'd gained from those jobs, he still cowered when faced with dominating males. Emotionally unstable from everything that had happened in his life, he tried his best not to let those thoughts and memories control him. Dawn spreading across the sky, Caden rose to shower and dress in one of the few outfits he owned. Locking his door behind him, deadbolt and all, he trudged down the stairs, stepping around the drunken bum that lay at the bottom. The area he resided in couldn't be considered the most sanitary, nor the safest, but it was cheap and the only thing he could afford. Traffic had already started flowing heavily along the streets of New York City as he slowly wound his way through the crowds of passerby toward the labor agency. When he arrived, he gave Terry Reynolds, the manager, a tentative smile. "I don't know what I'm going to do with you, kid," Terry admonished quietly. He didn't know the kid's story, but he knew something bad had happened to him. The haunted look that shadowed the boy's eyes told him that much at least. "How many jobs has that been in 3 weeks? 5? Let me see if I have anything else," he said with a sigh, and Caden gave him a grateful look, plopping down into one of the cracked vinyl chairs in the front office while Terry wandered back into his own. 30 minutes went by before Terry returned to the front office. He'd come up with a great idea. At least he'd hoped Caden thought so. "Listen, Caden, would you be willing to get out of the city?" "What?" Caden asked, his voice hoarse. He didn't use it much. No friends and fear of strangers kept him silent a good portion of the time. "Well, I know you have trouble with big groups of people, but my cousin needs someone on his ranch in Montana to cook and clean. Can you cook?" Caden stared at him in surprise. He was an excellent cook, if he thought so himself. He loved to cook and had been doing so since he was 12. "I don't know what they would think. I like to think I'm a pretty good cook. But Montana?" The idea suddenly appealed to him, getting out of the city and away from the huge crowds of people. "It's only for 3 months, though. After that, you'd have to find something else. You see, he has a lot more workers and ranch hands coming in during the next few months because of roundup season and all, so he needs someone who can make food, and lots of it." "Can I trust you to do this, kid?" Terry asked him softly. Caden nodded and then looked down at his hands. "What about my apartment?" "You'll have to let that go. But if anything, when the 3 months are up, you can stay with me until you find another one," Terry offered eagerly. "Will your cousin mind that I'm a guy?" Caden asked quietly. "I already called him. He knows you're a guy and doesn't care at all as long as you can cook. It's not like you're going to be sleeping with him or anything." Caden's head shot up and his eyes widened with panic. But Terry's words sank in, and he nodded. "All right. I guess that'll be fine." "Good. You'll leave tomorrow. There'll be a plane ticket waiting for you at the airport," Terry told him. He stood up jerkily, unsure of what the hell he had just gotten himself into, and headed back to his apartment to pack up the very minor belongings he had. There were few personal items since the apartment had been partially furnished when he rented it. The only things he had to take with him included several articles of clothing, the coffee pot, and the journals that he wrote lyrics in. He loved to write songs, beautiful, heartbreaking songs. Something to get his fears out, and his desire to be loved, even though he knew that that would never happen because of the emotional and physical scars he carried. The next day, as he stood waiting in line at the counter, his duffel bag on the floor beside him, Caden sensed the curious stares at the scar on his face, and he bit his lip to stop himself from yelling at the strangers to leave him alone. It always happened that way. No matter where he went, people stared at the grotesqueness of his face. The line moved, and then he arrived at the front to claim his ticket. He showed his ID, and moments later he sat waiting at the gate for his flight to be called. Taking out the black and white composition book that looked ragged from a lot of use, he started to write. He had almost finished the song by the time they called his flight, and he completed it on the way out to Montana. He wound up falling asleep partway there, only to be brought awake by one of the flight attendants shaking his shoulder because he'd started crying in his sleep. He gave her a pained smile and shook his head when she asked if he needed anything. When Caden arrived, he stepped out into the airport and looked around, spotting the turnstile baggage claim. He strode forward and looked for his blue duffel bag. He heard a voice behind him call his name by the time the bag reached him. He snatched it up and turned around to find a man a little shorter than himself standing there and looking around the airport. "I'm Caden James," he said as he approached the man, waiting to see the same curious stare at his scar. But to his surprise, that wasn't what happened at all. Instead, the little man cracked a smile at him, causing his tan-weathered face to crease even further, and his blue eyes twinkled at him merrily. "I'm Charlie, Logan's foreman. Is that all you have?" he asked, frowning at the bag in Caden's hands.